Hello, and welcome to Accio Politics, a podcast about politics in the wizarding world. I'm Helene, your co-host, producer, and overall pretty happy and content person right now. And I'm super excited because we have a very special guest joining us on today's episode. Kat! Kat is here to join us. I'm so excited.
Yay, I am here, and you are making my Slytherin ego very, very happy. Thank you for calling me a very special guest. I appreciate that.
I mean, personally, you're a very special guest to me because you and I know this, but our listeners may not know this, but we are very close friends, and I've always wanted to have you on an episode of the podcast, so I'm very excited to talk about this chapter with you, which I think is one of your favorite chapters, so I can't wait to hear a little bit more about why that is.
Yeah, it's my favorite. And you and I have been planning this for 6 months. We were like, all right, when are you going to hit Order of the Phoenix chapter 37? When is that? Oh, it's like the end of May next year. Cool. Book me in. And It's finally here. It's finally here. We are at that moment. So.
Yes, it's been a culmination of lots of planning and excitement, and it's all here.
I mean, excitement for you, maybe.
Oh, rude. Well,
I'm just kidding, everybody. Helene's my third favorite person.
Goodness. So, yeah. I'm just fighting my way up to number one. It's just it's a slow burn.
Slowly but surely.
Well, since this is, I think we have figured out that maybe this is your first time ever on this podcast. And if that is true, we have a lot of questions to have our listeners get to know you a little bit. So I have those ready for you here. Are you ready to be interviewed?
Let's do it.
Kat?
I'm ready.
Okay. Perfect. So go ahead and tell us your Hogwarts house and also, if it is relevant to you, your secondary house.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I have a Slytherin ego that is actually my second house, and it is very relevant to me because I think it's like 49% of my personality, and the other 51% is Ravenclaw. Those flip-flop all the time. I do think I am pretty firmly a Ravenclaw with a secondary Slytherin, but I definitely have days where I am like 100% Slytherin. So, but yeah, Ravenclaw, Slytherin. So I like to think of them as the two sides of the same coin. They're very similar houses. So
yeah, so you're just everything that the podcast is currently missing, because we have a very proud Puff here in myself, and then Adri, our other co-host, is very Gryffindor. So
she is very Gryffindor.
You kind of round it all out. But yes, I would say that describes you pretty well.
Oh, glad you agree.
Well, do you have a favorite character in the series, and who is it, and why?
Yeah, you're gonna love my answer.
I know.
I have an Dobby. Idea. No, I mean it is Dobby, but also Ronald Weasley. So yeah,
I'll never understand.
I mean, I'll never understand why you hate him so much. So
I'll never get it. I understand you very well as a person. I've known you for a while now, and I feel like I know you pretty well. And I just the whole love of Ronald Weasley and just doesn't click in my mind. I don't get it.
I'm multifaceted, Helene.
I guess. Yeah, you're like an onion. You have layers.
I do. Oh, and I do love onions. You don't like onions. Why did you use onion as an example?
I was actually making a Shrek reference, which I do love.
Oh, I didn't get that. Right over my head.
But I do hate onions. But I love Shrek.
And me.
And you. And
right.
layers. Right. I should say you're like a cake, because cakes have layers.
Oh, cakes are real good. Yeah.
Cakes are way better than onions.
I think we both agree on that. Yes.
Perfect.
And most of the listeners, I think, would probably agree too.
Yes. Have a birthday onion. No.
Yeah.
No. Just doesn't sound as good. No.
It doesn't. No. Yeah.
Okay. So can you do you have a reason why Ron is your favorite character, or?
So it's funny because I actually tend to not do the whole favorites thing. Mm-hmm. Granted, I have a favorite book, but that's not because I dislike the other books. It's just because I relate to that book more. And when it comes to characters, I think Ron shows the most amount of growth in the series. And so I appreciate that about him, because I went through a bit of a metamorphosis. I can't say that word. Metamorphosis. Anyway, I can relate to that. Growing up, I'm an incredibly different person than I was 15, 20 years ago. I think most people are. But my point is,
Yeah.
I relate to his struggle. So super poor growing up, all those things. So yeah.
Yeah. It's weird because most of my friends are big Ronald lovers, and I get compared to him a lot,
Hmm.
and
I know.
I just
I mean,
can't.
I just didn't want to tell you that the real reason is that I love his middle name. And I can't wait to have a kid, just kidding, so that I can name them Bilious. Whether it's no matter who they are going to be named Bilious. I'm sorry, it's just going to happen. Listeners, I'm kidding. That's like the worst middle name ever. But I still love Ron.
Yeah, I had never heard of the name Bilious before Harry Potter.
Is it totally made up? It must be.
It has
But
to be.
sorry
My
to
name.
any listeners whose name is Bilious, but
Well, yeah, it's like my name is Bill. Oh, is that short for William? No, it's short for Bilious. Like what? When was that?
terrible. Terrible.
Never.
But I also truly, truly, truly love Dobby. And he's the one who I usually talk about when I go on rants about my favorite character. Brave. Just bravery.
Yeah,
That poor little elf.
Dobby. It's like Dobby's one of those characters that I don't hate, but I find him to be kind of annoying a lot of the
Oh my
time.
god, you're gonna pull the Jar Jar Banks bullshit on me. Oh, sorry, you haven't seen Star Wars.
I actually have seen Star Wars, excuse me,
Oh,
but
just
and
kidding.
I
Oh,
actually
wait, that's Lord of the Rings. It's
yeah,
Lord of the Rings you haven't seen.
I've actually also seen Lord of the Rings. I just don't like it.
That's right. Okay.
I'm like I kind of like because I first saw the prequel Star Wars movies when I was pretty young in theaters, and I remember like thinking Jar Jar Binks was like cute and like I mean not like attractive but like adorable.
Right. Sure. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You have a framed photo of
I
him in your room,
said cute, and I
in your
definitely did.
house.
Like, and once it came out, I was like, "Oh, people are gonna take cute the wrong way." I meant cute, like cuddly, not like.
I understand. As a kid, I could see that. I don't mind Jar Jar. He's fine. I think he's funny and clumsy and whatever. Who cares? Who
Yeah.
cares?
Well, I'm interested. There's no Dobby in this chapter, so I probably won't touch on it. But I am also interested to hear about your love of Dobby at some point.
Okay.
But
I'll
but
regale you after the show.
oh, perfect.
Mhm.
So you alluded to having not exactly a favorite Potter book because it's just one that you relate to more than the others. What is that one Potter book that stands out for you?
It's this book, Order of the Phoenix. Actually, it's my favorite book by far for innumerable reasons. Mostly, I find it to be the most, I mean, again, I guess this is a thing for me. I think it's the most relatable.
Mm-hmm.
The stories of grief and pain and sadness and trying to figure out how to come through that. It's just,
See,
I love it for all the reasons that most people hate it.
yeah, so I was going to
So,
say I think that I think that it's actually kind of one of the least relatable in some ways because and I think that's why people dislike it because not everybody has really experienced this level of grief before. And so the people who don't really exactly know what Harry's going through are kind of just look at this book and is like he's just being so whiny and
oh,
annoying and angsty.
yeah, I definitely think it's also one of those books that grows with you. So if you read this book the first time when you're 11, 10, 12, teens at any point, you will probably dislike it for all the things Helene just said. You can't relate to it. Me here, almost 40, hardcore can relate to it. The first time I read it, so what, Order came out in 2003, so I was 22. Hardcore, I can relate to that. So I think that's why it's my favorite book. So, and talking to people too, maybe they didn't like the book when they were younger, but now that they're older and they've gone through some stuff, they like it a lot more now. So, like I said, it's one of those books that grows with you.
Yeah, I didn't I didn't hate the book when I was younger, but I definitely it was I think that the reason I usually like disliked it then and a little bit dislike it now is that it's a bummer, you know? Like a lot of the times I go and I escape into a book to feel better, I guess. And this book kind of pulls you back into reality and is like the world is hard, things suck, life happens, and you got to deal with it. And I love it for that reason, but I also like it. Also, just bums me out.
I mean, I suppose I understand that, but also I don't feel that at all when I read Order of the Phoenix. I think because we know where the story goes and how it ends.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't feel that at all. So probably doesn't help that I couldn't give two F's about Sirius Black dying. So
Yeah. I mean, I actually am not. I'm also kind of in that camp where I'm not as big of a Sirius fan, but like, it's not his death that makes the book sad to me.
I mean, it is for a lot of people,
It
though.
is for a lot of people. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For me, it's more Umbridge. Like, I feel like the book just points out parts of reality that we just don't want to be reminded of, you know? Like, people like Umbridge exist, and I don't want to be reminded of that fact.
But that's sort of
Like,
why it's important because you need to learn to recognize those people and how to beat them.
exactly. Yeah, I've definitely taken something new away from this reread for the podcast, um, and seen a lot of things as an adult that I didn't exactly notice when I was reading this as a child.
Good. That's why these rereads and these, close readings and things like this are important. So
Yeah. Wow. Well, yeah, you're probably in the minority with this being your favorite book, but it's definitely interesting to see.
I know more people than you would think
Yeah.
who cite Order of the Phoenix as their favorite.
Okay.
So,
Well, I'm super pumped to get into Half-Blood Prince because, as you know, that's my favorite book. So,
hmm so listeners, for the record, some of you may know me, and probably most of the people who found this from my feed will know me from Alohomora, which is another Harry Potter podcast. And I just finished a sort of spin-off show for that called Full Circle, and Half-Blood Prince on that show was my favorite. So I have a new appreciation for Half-Blood, and I'm excited for you all to get into it because I think you're going to find a lot of really fun stuff. That book is basically the same. The two halves are basically the same book. So you could just read the first half and you would get the gist of the entire book.
yeah,
But
and then
anyway.
if you only read the first half, you wouldn't have to read about Dumbledore dying, so you could pretend that he never does, and that's great because he's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah,
So,
but there are hints to it like in the early chapters. So
ugh, I got to keep my eyes out.
yeah, you should.
Well, on to the next question that we have here for you. What is like who do you think would be your rival in the Wizarding world? Who's your least favorite person?
I think least favorite and rival are different answers.
Okay, do rival then.
Okay. Probably somebody, I mean, this seems like such a cliche answer.
I mean,
I guess Umbridge.
yeah, most people think I think say
Yeah, and that's
Umbridge.
why I think it's cliche and why I don't want it to be my answer. But I can't think of anybody who is more like for the establishment.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Maybe Fudge.
Yeah, but Fudge is like a bumbling idiot. I thought about Pettigrew for a minute, but he is so pathetic that he's not worth my time.
It's pretty awful though. Yeah.
I don't know. How about I just say like Yaxley or something, just to like not say Umbridge, but it's really Umbridge. Yeah, but like Yaxley. That's my answer. It's Yaxley.
Yeah, she just wants to be cool and say
Yeah,
something different.
right. Slytherin. Yeah.
I'm a hipster. I hated Yaxley before it was cool.
Oh, I'm definitely not a hipster. Mm-mm. Apparently, I am a geriatric millennial. So
Oh,
whoever came up with that BS term.
is that like a real classification now?
I mean, I don't know. The internet is using it. I'm an older millennial. I don't need to
Goodness.
be called geriatric, but whatevs.
Uh, yeah,
Okay,
that
Gen Z.
just makes people feel older than they are.
Yeah, no. I had
Not
someone
cool.
ask me if I was 27 the other day, and I was like, you betcha.
I love you. Whoever that person is, you're great.
Yep. You're 27? Sure. Yep. You got it.
That's
Definitely
how old
27.
I am. I'm
Yeah.
27.
Yeah. So,
Although Rex will fight with you on that. He doesn't believe that I know my own age.
yeah. Well, Rex is wrong. And he's not here. So,
Yep. And now this is to the last question, which is my favorite question to ask people. And I mean, you maybe you have an answer for this, maybe you don't. But has the Potter series shaped your political views or the way you view the world in any way? And if so, how?
I think my answer is going to be yes and no. No, because I read them as an older person. I didn't start reading them until my early 20s, and my views were pretty well intact at that point. Although I was dating a Republican, newsflash, I'm a Democrat. And so there was a lot of butting heads, there, but I also really didn't come into my political identity until my early 30s. And at that point, so let's see, I would have turned 30 in 2012. That is the year that we started Alohomora. And so reading through the series with groups of other people does help inform that view, and it does help morph my views. So I don't want to say that it completely shaped my views, because I think they were intact coming into it, but I think it has changed them and helped to strengthen and deepen them. So yes and no.
Okay, I like that.
Mostly yes.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good point that the age you are when you read the series for the first time definitely impacts what the answer to that question might be.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Because if you already have established political views, it's pretty rare for a book series to completely change them.
Yeah. So. Agreed.
But they definitely can enforce them, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we've gotten to know our guest host Kat a little bit more, and we are going to start talking about what we all came here for, which is Harry Potter. Today we're going to be talking about chapter 37 of Order of the Phoenix, The Lost Prophecy.
Usually these are very verbose, but I left this to just a couple sentences here for your behalf, Helene and the listeners. So, summary. This is the one where, after the battle at the Department of Mysteries, where Sirius was murdered by Bellatrix Lestrange, Harry returns to Dumbledore's office, where he is finally told the secrets of the prophecy and the motivations behind Dumbledore's actions up until then.
Yes.
There. That is the shortest summary I've ever read in my life. Which I'm okay with.
Before we get too deep into it, this is the time where I want to take some time to thank our patrons for helping the podcast exist. So thank you, patrons, for all that you do. But if you are not a patron yet, we just like to remind you that $2 a month will get you access to bonus content for every episode, but then the $5 and $10 a month tiers get you physical rewards every 3 months, like stickers and recipe cards and all these fun things, usually handcrafted by Adri herself, who's a very talented artistic person, and you do not want to miss out. So go check us out, patreon.com/aciopolitics, and join the fam.
I mean, that's only 200 pennies, people. Right. You probably have that amount of spare change in your car. So go out to your car. We'll wait. Just kidding. We're not going to wait. But go out to your car and look. I bet you could find $2 that you could toss their way.
It's less than a cup of coffee. Just skip your Starbucks once a month and throw that towards us. And we'll keep making awesome bonus content for you.
Bing.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the chapter that we're here to discuss, it's time for our Potter Watch segment, where we discuss some of the latest news in the United States. Potter Watch, what the ministry doesn't want you to know. All right, Potter Watch, what the ministry doesn't want you to know. So, Kat generously sent me a million articles that were contended.
And Helene picked the first one that I sent her instead of reading all of them. She was like, "This one is good." I was like, "But wait, what about the 12 others that I sent you?" She's like,
"I liked it. You sent it." And I was like, "Ooh, that's right." And then you just kept on sending more and more. And I was like, "But I liked the first one." I mean, if there were any that you found that were not the first one that you really want to discuss, we can definitely bring that up.
Nope, I'm just going to read them off so the listeners can go find them for themselves. Okay? So this one here, federal judge hands down 6-year sentence for ex-St. Paul officer who beat a man while a dog mauled him. I really wanted to talk about it so we could cheer for the dog. Basically, rural ambulance crews are running out of money, which is a super duper bummer. And then this also super duper bummer story. super understatement there as well. A man was executed for murder 4 years ago, and then they found someone else's DNA on the murder weapon. So there's no word for how
Yep.
absolutely terrible that is. And the world news one, which I thought was really cool, is that archaeologists discover ancient Christian runes in Egypt's western desert, which is cool. I liked Egypt, so I was like, "Ooh, we should do that," because the Weasleys go
Ooh.
to Egypt. I figured there was a thing there, but if we were in Prisoner,
Yeah.
that would
Well, that's
make more
pretty
sense.
cool. Well, yeah.
But anyway,
Now the listeners
what
can go
is
look it up for themselves. The one
but
that I chose to focus on in this particular segment was a story regarding the riot that happened at the Capitol on January 6th. According to U.S. authorities, $90,000 has been confiscated from a Utah man who sold footage of a woman being fatally shot during the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Basically, this man took this footage. He went undercover as like a journalist, I believe.
yeah, there were so many people who were pretending to be quote
Yeah.
independent journalists. Total effing BS, and this guy got caught,
Yep.
which
Yep. He
only time I'll cheer for the FBI. That's probably not true, but
Yeah,
I'm
so
cheering for him
he
now.
recorded the violence, under the guise of being an independent journalist, like you mentioned. Caught this woman being fatally shot on camera, sold the footage to a number of news outlets, which have been redacted from this news story, so we don't actually know what news outlets they are. Actually, they were redacted from the warrant itself. But he sold the footage for $90,000, and the government was like, "Yeah, no, you don't get to keep that money. We're going to take that away from you."
Yeah, the crazy thing is, most of us have probably seen
Oof.
that footage.
I don't think I have, because I think I would remember watching a woman get shot on camera. So I don't think I've seen that footage. But I mean,
Are you sure? Because there was only one woman that was
I don't,
killed, and that footage went around like
I don't
rampant.
know. I mean, I watched footage like every once in a while on the news, and I watched that whole QAnon documentary series on HBO that showed some footage from the riot, but I don't remember that.
Okay. Well,
I bet.
it was pretty brutal. She was trying to break into the hallway where, like, I forget what they call them. Officers? Are they called officers? I don't know. Whatever. The hallway where all of their offices are, she was trying to get into it, not Pelosi's,
Hmm.
but that's where they were
Okay.
like hiding or whatever. And she got shot because she like
Oh
climbed
man.
through the window. The thing that freaked me out about the footage is that my
Hmm.
congressman, Jim McGovern, is standing in the
Oh
background
my
when she
goodness.
gets shot. And I remember because I had a friend that used to work for him. And so I messaged and I was like, oh my gosh, did you see this footage? Like Jim is in the background. And he went, holy crap, I had no idea that he was like literally right
Oh
there, but
man.
he was. Crazy. I don't recommend you look it up because it is
Yeah,
a woman's
I probably
life
won't.
blinking away. But I didn't expect to see what I
Yeah.
saw when I clicked on that. So I'm real glad that this guy has been arrested, that he doesn't get to keep his money. I also hope that the news outlets that bought it don't get their money back. I don't know where that 90,000 is going to go. Probably into somebody's already deep pockets,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty awful to profit off of someone's death. And I feel like you got to be pretty heartless to, have that footage and then you literally sell it for money and profit off of it. Yeah, it's just awful. So I'm glad that he didn't get away with it.
Mhm.
But just a reminder that a lot of the people who went to that riot and participated were not great.
Not great. That's the underscore here. They're not
Exactly.
great.
Takeaway. Too long, don't read. Takeaway. People at the riot weren't great. All right.
Not
Well,
good.
if any of those other stories that we mentioned that Kat had read the headlines out earlier of,
The rejected stories.
yes, if any of those interest you, definitely go look those up. Feel free to write to us if you want us to talk about them on a future episode. But that's it for Potter Watch. Now it's time for Hogwarts Debate Club, where we discuss the politic that we both took away from the chapter and kind of do a little deep dive later on why we chose that politic. So, Kat, what was the politic that you took away from chapter 37 of Order of the Phoenix?
So there were actually many, and it took me a little bit to narrow down which one I wanted to talk about. But this is so ironic considering we are talking about the
Mm-hmm.
lost prophecy, which is literally about my politic. But my politic is premeditation, which is like literally defined as the act of planning something beforehand, which is basically the entire
Mm-hmm.
series. But anyway, so just, the act of like trying to plan every single step in a series of actions, which rarely leads to things actually
Mm-hmm.
working out perfectly because, I mean, life just isn't that
Right.
sweet. Things just don't work out that beautiful. I have further evidence for that. We'll get to it in,
Okay.
in a little bit.
All right. So basically, you chose premeditation because of like Dumbledore's actions and him like revealing all of his thought process basically in this chapter. Is that accurate?
Among other things,
All
yes,
right.
ma'am.
Well, mine is very similar.
Oh my gosh, I'm
I
so
know. I
shocked.
also workshopped a couple of different options. I thought about maybe doing grief because
Oh,
we
that's a
do
good
see a
one.
lot of Harry's grief in this chapter and how he expresses it. I thought about because basically when I read this chapter again, reread the chapter, I it the part that resonated with me this time was definitely like the emotional aspect of not only what Harry is going through, but also what Dumbledore is going through in recalling everything that he is and telling Harry all this stuff that he has kept to himself for so long. And I mean, I cried reading this chapter multiple times today when I reread it this morning. I don't usually cry during this chapter, but I cried like probably at three different points. So it was very
Well, you've got some things going on that you could relate to.
yeah, I don't
So
know.
I get it.
It just really hit me differently and very strongly this time. And so when I finished the chapter and I was like, okay, I got to come up with politic. I wanted to do one that kind of focused on like that emotion and the overall resonance of the chapter that stuck with me, but I decided the one that I thought actually fit the best was strategy. So you said premeditation, I said strategy. They're pretty similar. So strategy is defined as a plan of action or policy designed to achieve a major or overall aim. So obviously in this chapter we learn all about Dumbledore's overall strategy that he took, all the steps that he took towards reaching his overall goal of defeating Voldemort eventually down the road. And he kind of just walks us through his thought process. I feel like this is one of many kind of like info dump chapters that we get from Dumbledore. We get one, I know, at least in Deathly Hallows at the train station after Harry's, you know, death. I guess is what you call it.
Just realized that I'm listening to you and I'm nodding, and it's like, Kat, you're on a podcast. You need to use your words.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yes, Helene, I
yeah.
agree.
And normally, I gotta say, normally when it comes to like fiction and storytelling, I don't tend to like exposition. Like this chapter is full of exposition and like information dumping, and just kind of like okay, so the book's over. Here's everything you needed to know about like what was happening in the book and why. But so I know you're gonna disagree, but what I was like ultimately getting to was like normally I don't like that, but for some reason when Dumbledore does it, I just like eat it up. And I love hearing like everything that he was thinking, and I wish it was kind of done in a more clever way. Like I wish it wasn't just a monologue of him explaining. It's kind of similar to like a villain monologue, right, where they're like, okay, this has been my master plan this whole time, wahahaha, like, except that it's a good guy, not a bad guy, and is telling good things and not bad things. But or I guess it's subjective whether or not the things he's saying are good or bad. But anyway, all of this to say that I don't usually like that format, but I do think that in this aspect, in this specific situation, I think it worked.
Well, let's get into the discussion, and I will definitely tell you that. I can't do my big reveal until I get there. I'm hyping it up so bad. It's like
I was
not a
gonna
big
say,
reveal.
what is it
But
even? What are you talking about? All right. So, a recap. Cat's politic was premeditation minus strategy. On to the in-depth discussion. And so I'll go first with my quoter moment that I thought embodied the politic in this chapter. For strategy, I picked this quote. And I had to make my decision too with regard to the years ahead. Did I believe that Voldemort was gone forever? No. I know not whether it be 10, 20, or 50 years before he returned, but I was sure he would do so, and I was sure too, knowing him as I have done, that he would not rest until he killed you. That's obviously spoken by Dumbledore, so obviously it just kind of illustrates that he had to kind of put this plan into motion and start thinking about how he was going to reach his overall goal all the way back, the beginning of the first book when Voldemort murdered Harry's parents and attempted to murder him. And he had to kind of plan around how he was going to keep this kid safe until he was ready to kill him. What about you? What was the quarter moment in the chapter that rang for you for premeditation?
so the one that I picked, okay, so when I talk about premeditation, especially in reference to this chapter, I'm sort of so I almost decided to, instead of premeditation, say prophecy, but I thought that was maybe like too on the nose. But I think about the two words together. So the quote that I picked is most relevant to how premeditation never works out. So even if you think about our news story that we talked about 10
Mm-hmm.
minutes ago, that whole riot was premeditated for 80% of the people, 90%. I don't know how many. Some people I think were definitely like swept up in it, but for a lot of people it was premeditated. It didn't work out the way it was planned. And so this chapter, my favorite chapter, Order of the Phoenix, is a book that I've read the most. I know it like front to back. This is one of the quotes that always jumps out at me. And I thought it was really relevant for premeditation slash
Okay.
prophecy, which again is very relevant here. The quote is, "Do you see, Harry? Do you see the flaw in my brilliant plan now? I have fallen into the trap I had foreseen, that I had told myself I could avoid, that I must avoid." So not only does Dumbledore, okay, so in this moment, not only is he talking about the plan that he has created for Harry and Harry's life all these years, right? But he's talking about the plan he had for himself in relation to Harry. So, like, how he would treat the situation in regards to his own life growing up. He didn't want to make the same mistakes that he made as a kid. So, he had these two plans that kept like crunching against each other this whole time. And neither of them really ended up working out the way he had planned. That premeditation, that prophecy, like in this quote here, the whole chapter is them talking about the prophecy and how Voldemort like should have waited and chose wrong and made bad choices. And then Dumbledore here is saying, "Oh no, I basically did that too." Okay? And so it was so funny reading it for me this time because I focusing on the political
Mm-hmm.
angle and the politic of it is something I had never done before. So when I read it, that particular line, the flaw in my brilliant plan, I couldn't help think about the literal chapter in Deathly Hallows, the flaw in the plan, and everything that had gone wrong in Voldemort's plan, like, which is concurrently running with Dumbledore's plan. It was just the choice of the flaw in the plan, that exact
Mm-hmm.
language, and how these two characters that are just butting heads the whole way, trying to like I don't want to say achieve the same thing, but like end game, it's all because of this
Yeah.
prophecy, right? The way that they're acting. The paths that they take to get there are different. but I literally cannot perfectly put it into words, but it's that language for me. The flaw in the plan
Mhm.
language. I could not help think about Dumbledore and Voldemort and the foolish mistakes that they both made. So,
Yeah. And I think that this chapter really does show, especially in relation to what you were just saying, like this chapter shows that Dumbledore is willing to admit when he's wrong or when he's done something wrong, which I feel like is a really good quality in a person that you don't really get in like a leader like Dumbledore very often. And that's definitely
I mean, it took him a hell of a long time to get to this point. Don't give him too much credit. It took him way too long to get here with Harry. Way too
yes,
long.
yes, but I love that when he does get here, he puts it all out on the line. Like he's not afraid of showing Harry just how wrong he was. He's not trying to make himself look better. He is being completely honest with, like, okay, I know that I did something wrong, and I know that like it had a lot of consequences in your life as well as like a lot of other people's lives, but I'm putting it out on the table for you, and I'm just letting you know, like, this was all my fault, and I'm sorry.
Sure. Here's 60% of the truth, Harry. Because that is literally what happens in this chapter. He says he's going to give him the whole
Yeah,
truth, but it's like 60% of the truth. You're giving Dumbledore too much credit.
I also
Sorry.
like we can't 100% fully know what he has like what he knows as fact quite yet. Like I think at this point in the series, Dumbledore has a hunch that Harry is a Horcrux, but I don't think he knows for sure. And I don't think he's the type of person to tell someone something as fact that he is not 100% sure of himself first.
I'm not talking about that at all, but Dumbledore's known about Horcruxes since Harry's second year, suspected them before that, and knew Harry was some sort of crux back. Um, some I don't think it was when Harry was not
Well,
murdered
does
as a baby, but it was definitely
do
very
you think
early
he
on
knows
that
the
he knew.
implications of that yet though? Like he might know that Harry is a Horcrux, but he might not know what that means. Like in terms of the fact that Harry does have to die. He might not have figured that out yet. Like maybe he's holding on to some hope that Harry will be able to defeat Dumbledore as the last Horcrux without having to die himself. Like maybe he's still looking into ways of being able to destroy that Horcrux inside Harry without killing Harry. I will
No.
always have some way of thinking the best of Dumbledore because I do think that he is overall a good person.
Oh, I didn't say that he wasn't, but he's definitely not telling Harry 100% of the truth here. And, no pun intended, sort of pun intended, I'm going to circle back to when I mentioned before the podcast I just finished with
Yeah.
Ring Theory. If you think about the events that happen in book 7, everything in King's Cross Station, where he's talking about, like, I thought this and I knew this and guesswork this and whatever, that is a ring to book 1. Dumbledore already knows this stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe not all of it. Yes, he's probably guessing. But as he says, his guesses are usually right.
Yeah.
So,
He's the
and I
master.
was mostly talking about Snape BT dubs because there's a whole other pile of ish
Yeah.
here that Dumbledore's keeping from our boy.
Yeah, he's a master of telling people what he wants them to know when he wants them to know it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he's very strategic that way. Strategy.
Oh,
Look.
look at that.
Yes. I would say strategic is probably one of the biggest words that we can use to describe Dumbledore as a character, for sure. Speaking of Dumbledore, he's the character I chose for my. I know,
Oh my
crazy.
gosh, there were so many to choose from in this
I
in
know,
this
like all
chapter.
like I
There were
didn't choose
so
like the
many.
random portrait snoring in this like on the side or anything. He was. I mean, maybe that person was strategic too. I don't know, but strategy is my politic, and of course, the most strategic character in this chapter is Dumbledore. Obviously, he he reveals that he's been working towards this one goal this entire time, and he lays out almost completely, the steps of what he has, of the steps he has taken to reach that goal so far up until now. More or less all of them. Some of them he is, I guess, keeping out. What?
I'm just thinking as you were saying, in The Prince's Tale,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember if this is a movieism or if this happens in the book. Snape and Dumbledore have the conversation about Harry being, quote, a pig for slaughter
Yeah.
in the summer between Harry's 5th and 6th year. Because it's when Snape's working on his hand.
Right. I kind of always thought it was like at the beginning of the 6th school year.
Right. So that'd be between 5 and 6, summer. Because Dumbledore goes
I thought
looking
it was
for
like
the...
after 6 started, but I mean, it's not too huge of a difference.
No. Yeah, it's in the summer.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be long after this because this takes place towards the end of June. So.
Okay. What, was there more to that, or you just wanted to point that out?
Nope. I was just trying to point out the timeline here.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess at that point, maybe after this conversation, Dumbledore sits on it a bit and realizes, yeah, Harry's gonna have to die, and it's it's not like he's gonna just call up Harry after Harry goes home for the summer and was like, hey, by the way, I forgot to tell you while you were here in my office grieving Sirius's death, you also have to die, FYI. Just thought you should know. Have a good summer.
I mean, that's true, but I think that Dumbledore already knows. I think because he's suspected for a long time and he knows the full text of the prophecy. I think the thing that he was trying to figure out all that time is how exactly it needs to happen. And
Yeah.
how can Harry survive after death?
Do you think maybe that, I mean, because we see at the very end of this chapter, the author notes that Dumbledore is crying. She notes that there are tears falling from his face when he is telling him, hey, by the way, I didn't make you prefect because I thought you already had enough to deal with. I kind of feel like maybe in the back of his head, he's thinking like, oh, this kid already has so much to deal with. Like, and now I'm pretty sure that I know he has to die too. And maybe that's why another reason why he was crying, because he's realizing it.
Maybe, but I actually think that he's thinking about his own past and his own shortcomings. Dumbledore is for all of his strengths of being this puppet master, trying to plan the entire story straight from the beginning, as I mentioned, the premeditation, the prophecy angle. Dumbledore is very, how can I say this so it doesn't sound negative? Or I'll just say it. He is very self-involved, and everything that happened in his younger years with his sister, his family, Grindelwald, influences everything he does. I don't think that he's 100% thinking about Harry here. I think he's thinking about his own life experiences and how that got him to where he is today.
Okay, it's an interesting read for sure. I'm not sure I 100% agree, but I can see where you're coming from.
Read the language, when he's talking about how he tried to do this, out of love to save him. I'm telling you, it reeks of Ariana. Reeks of Ariana.
I guess. I don't know. I always like to believe that Dumbledore really does truly care for Harry very deeply. And there are very rare moments throughout the series where we see that care for Harry shine through. And I think that it's so unspoken throughout most of the series that the reason I believe that literally the only redeemable part of Cursed Child is I don't like Cursed Child. I saw the face you made. I don't like Cursed Child, but there's one scene in Cursed Child that when I saw it on stage, I cried like a little baby, and that's when Harry visits Dumbledore's portrait, and Dumbledore finally tells him that he loves him. Because I do feel like Dumbledore has such care and affection towards Harry that he just doesn't allow himself to feel very often or show ever.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I do think that Dumbledore loves Harry greatly, but I think that that love comes from his sister. I don't think it comes from purely from Harry. I think it comes from Dumbledore's past and his experiences with his family.
We'll agree to disagree. I don't really believe that, but I mean,
Then why? What motivates Dumbledore to love Harry? He doesn't know the kid.
I think he loves Harry because he's seen who Harry really is. He's seen Harry grown up. He's seen Harry face adversity after adversity and struggle and overcome it. And he sees the person that Harry is. He's watched him, deal with all of these awful things in his life and become better and stronger for it. And that's why he loves Harry. That's why I love Harry. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I
I think.
no, I think that he loves Harry because he recognizes the similarities in the life that Ariana had. So,
Okay. I mean, maybe.
and Dumbledore is trying to make up for the lack of protection he gave his sister with Harry. So,
I mean, it's definitely it's definitely something that can be argued. I think that there's probably some legs there, but I guess when I
I think they're giant pedestals, not
well,
legs.
that's your opinion. I don't know. I feel like I don't think about much about Ariana when I am like seeing Dumbledore's actions played out. I don't really.
It informs everything he does. Literally everything he does is because of her. He literally wouldn't have the life he has right now if she was alive.
I mean, true, but I also don't think that means that he has to that like that's the one thing that he's stuck on his entire life either. Like I think that that's a big part of him. I think it shaped him, and I think it shaped how he views the world and how he chooses to exist in it moving forward. But I don't think that it is literally the motivation behind every single action he takes.
Okay.
Anyway, who is the character that you think embodies your politic of premeditation?
Amos Diggory.
Yeah, because he plays a huge part in this chapter.
He does. Obviously, it's Dumbledore, but even though we don't physically see him, of course, it's also Lord Voldemort, who is talked about
Mm-hmm.
significantly in this chapter as well. So
I think that that's fair. I mean, yeah, Voldemort might not physically be in this chapter, but he does play a very large part. So
he does. And they talk about him and around him and through him and under him and all those things. So
yes, they
the
sure
two of them for
they
sure.
sure do.
I mean, they are basically, wow, I'm like repeating everything that I'm saying, but they are two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
They are, the good to the evil, the Gryffindor to the Slytherin, all the things. So
Yeah, it's interesting.
you almost can't talk about one without talking about the other in relation to the Harry Potter series
Oh, I think that's
and his arc.
super super interesting. Something that I think would be fun to kind of deep dive into a little bit more. The similarities between Dumbledore and Voldemort.
They are innumerable.
Yeah. So the last part that we talk about in the in-depth discussion is kind of where we see our politics throughout the book. And so I'll go first with strategy. Throughout Order of the Phoenix, I mean, we see Dumbledore's strategy kind of in play. All the stuff that he explains in this chapter, we have seen in throughout the book. We just didn't really know what it meant until this chapter. So obviously, like Dumbledore refusing to be in the same room as Harry, refusing to teach him occlumency, or even just make eye contact with him was all part of Dumbledore's strategy to keep both himself and Harry ultimately safe um, until the end of the book. So, what about you?
Mm-hmm.
What did you have any specific, times throughout the book that you saw premeditation?
Sure. So I sort of touched on this on my diatribe a little bit ago, but it's much less so this entire book as it is literally the entire series.
Yeah.
Dumbledore's like foresight and the plan only gets them so far. As I mentioned, he and Voldemort both have this flaw in the plan that sort of throws a wrench in everything and changes the trajectory of everything that happens sort of after that. And, at the end of the series, not just this book, but at the end, everything is out of Dumbledore's hands. I mean, he's dead.
Mm.
It's completely out of his hands. It's all up to Harry now, which I think was part of Dumbledore's plan. I think he expected to be alive, but if he hadn't put on that ring, but see, that's the other flaw. Love. It's always Dumbledore's flaw. Love, 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 love.
Yeah.
Love here in this chapter. Love for his sister. Love for Grindelwald. Love for that ring. Whatever. But in the end, it's really up to Harry to make everything come to fruition, which ends up being the ultimate, as we know, downfall of Lord Voldemort. The flaw in that plan. So I would say it's much, like I said, much less so this book as it is the entire series. Premeditation gone awry.
Yeah, gotta say, I like that Dumbledore's flaw is love. I would rather that be his flaw than anything else.
Oh yeah, it's not a terrible flaw. Asterix, it's sometimes a terrible flaw when it comes to Dumbledore, but that's another show.
All right. Well, now that we've wrapped up the in-depth discussion, we're going to move on to our Dementors and Chocolate, where we kind of just dive a little bit deeper into the one thing that we really, loved in the chapter, and also one thing that we didn't like too much in the chapter. So, it looks like maybe you might not have a Dementor, but if you do have a Dementor in this chapter, Kat, please let us know what it is.
It's much more in this discussion because I didn't like it when you disagreed with me.
Okay, so your Dementor in this chapter is Helene. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But no, this is my favorite. This is my favorite chapter, and I'm not just saying this to be like, there's no Dementor, but it is It is actually my favorite chapter, and ironic, I find no flaw in this chapter.
No flaw in the plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
If I had, I mean, I don't even know if I could nitpick and find something.
Like there isn't one thing.
Harry is too sad about Sirius being dead. That makes me sound like a dick.
Well, I mean, a little bit. Well,
I can't even.
Is there like one thing that Dumbledore said throughout their discussion that you were like, he didn't need to say that, or this was like,
nope.
No, okay.
Nope. I love this chapter. It's my favorite chapter of the series. So.
You don't think that there was like, maybe Harry was overreacted by like ruining things in his office physically, or nothing like that? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, I did have a Dementor in this chapter, and it wasn't really anything like, that the characters themselves did. It was kind of more a choice I feel like was made by the author that really didn't need to be made. I didn't like how the very last thing said in the chapter before it ends is like Dumbledore being like, hey, by the way, I didn't make you prefect and this is why. Like, I kind of felt like that was it kind of cheapened the whole moment for me a little bit. Because, like, they're talking about all this really intense emotional stuff and, Sirius's death and it's all very emotional and very sad. And then at the end, he's just like, oh, yeah, so I didn't make you prefect because I thought it would be too much for you to handle. And it just kind of felt like it was thrown in at the end. Then, like, I'm like, this didn't really need to be said right now.
Yeah, that's actually a literary device that the author uses a lot. Like, a lot. Almost as much as she uses adverbs. So if you pay attention and go through, read listeners, read the last 4 paragraphs of any chapter, or all the chapters, whatever, 50% of them are going to end like this, because that's literally something that a literary device the author uses in order to lighten the mood. She does it all the time.
I really don't. Yeah. So that's the thing. I don't think that this chapter needed to be lightened. I think it should have ended on like a heavy note because it was a heavy chapter, and trying to lighten it at the end kind of just makes it cuts into the emotional reaction to it a little bit. Like, let this chapter be what it is. It's like a punch to the heart, basically. Like,
Mm-hmm.
You walk away from this chapter feeling all of the emotions, all the feels, and I didn't feel like I needed to be lightened. I think that it would have had more of an impact.
Yeah, it's supposed to show you Dumbledore's quirk and his
Mm,
lighthearted side and how much he cares about Harry. It's supposed to reinforce that that Dumbledore loves Harry and he's just doing everything for him that he possibly
mm-hmm.
can. But you didn't like the way that came across, so it clearly didn't achieve that for
Not
you.
for me.
So,
Nope, not for me. But
mm.
this one should be easy because you say it's your favorite chapter. So, what is the chocolate of this chapter? What makes you happy? What gives you joy in this chapter? Although it's not a very joyful chapter, but I'm sure you can find something.
I mean, I disagree. I think that just because the subject is morose and there's a lot of grief in this chapter, the thing that I love about it is that Harry is finally getting some of that information and Dumbledore is finally being 60% honest with Harry and telling him finally sort of a part of what is going to happen and we get a glimpse of humanity from Dumbledore, which is something that we often
Yeah,
miss when it comes to him. And I like any time that the two of them get to spend together having real
yeah.
conversations, which is one of my favorite things about Half Blood Prince, all the time that Harry and Dumbledore spend together, because they are not close. They do not spend a lot of time together. Period. Like the only time Harry and Dumbledore talk for the first 4 years is at the end of the book.
Yeah.
So sure, Dumbledore loves Harry and all that jazz. But you finally get to see it here, I think, which is part of the reason that I love it. And I love getting information. I love when the mystery is unlocked. I love all the exposition that you said that you don't normally like in chapters. I love that stuff. I love it. I love when the mystery comes together.
Yeah, I mean,
So I'm here for it.
the thing is, most of the time when authors or creators of any sort of fiction attempt to do exposition, they they just mess it up most of the time. It's really not easy to do exposition well.
Hmm.
But I do think that while this author has many a flaw, no one can really say that they're not a good writer. And the way that the exposition is handled, not only in this chapter, but a lot of the chapters where she does do these like info dumps, they're very it's very heartfelt, and it usually pulls at my heartstrings a little bit. So she did it well. She did it well.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean mine is similar because I love Dumbledore. I mean most of the listeners know this by now. um, Big Dumbledore fan, and this chapter is just you get to see a side of Dumbledore that you don't get to see very well. You don't get to see it very often, and I love Dumbledore and I love Harry and I love seeing Dumbledore's care for Harry and his thoughtfulness and how he feels towards Harry in this chapter. So that's my chocolate.
Ariana.
Oh, shush you. Goodness. Harryana. What? Anyway, so usually this is the part of the episode where we talk about the question that we asked last week and we read some of the answers that we got from our listeners. But we are recording on Sunday, and our episode from last week literally just released yesterday, so we have not had any time to gather any answers from listeners for this week's question. So I'm going to read the question, and then I thought maybe just you and I, Kat, could just say what we thought our answer was, and then we can come up with a question for the listeners for next week, and then we should have more than enough time to gather responses for that.
Coolio, let's do it.
All right, so last week's question was, why do you think Voldemort is so afraid of Dumbledore? So last chapter was the only man he ever feared, or the only one he ever feared, I think was the name of the chapter. And so we just want to know, like, why do we think Voldemort did fear Dumbledore? Why was Dumbledore the only man Voldemort ever feared?
So I don't think fear is the right word.
Well, the chapter title disagrees with you.
Sure, but I think deep down, fear is not the right word. I think that Voldemort envied Dumbledore, and I think that he was deeply jealous of Dumbledore, and in his own Voldemort way, had immense respect for Dumbledore. And I think that Voldemort feels jilted by Dumbledore. And that all leads back to the fact that Dumbledore has morals and he has love. And he has, to quote the end of Order of the Phoenix, something worth fighting for.
Right.
And Voldemort has none of those things. He probably doesn't care about the fact that he has no love. I don't give two F's about what Cursed Child says. Nope. But I do think that those other emotions, jealousy, envy, respect, all come down to Voldemort feeling inferior to Dumbledore and constantly trying to prove to himself and everybody else that he's better than Dumbledore, right, and constantly failing at it. So I don't think he's afraid of him at all. At all. I think fear is what you call the little bow that you put on the package of everything else that he's feeling when it comes to Dumbledore.
Okay, I think that's a fair assessment. I do think Voldemort has maybe the tiniest bit of fear towards.
He's too arrogant to be afraid of Dumbledore.
I think that the fact that I think there's a little seed inside Voldemort that acknowledges that Dumbledore might just have just a little bit more knowledge and be a little bit better at magic than Voldemort is, and that intimidates him, and I think that intimidation is expressed in some sort of fear. I think that he is a little afraid that when it came down to it, if he was to have a duel and one of them was going to die at the end, it would be him. If he hadn't made the Horcruxes. I mean, he can't die because of the Horcruxes. But say it was just Voldemort, no Horcruxes, and Dumbledore. He probably is just a little bit afraid that Dumbledore would be able to beat him.
Yeah, but that's having a fear of death, not a fear of Dumbledore.
But Dumbledore would be the only person who could bring that fear of death to reality.
I suppose. I don't think he's arrogant enough to. No, I said that wrong. I think he's too arrogant to think that Dumbledore is
better than him.
Better than him, no matter how many times he tries and fails to bring that to fruition. But I see what you're saying. If there were no Horcruxes, if it was just the two of them, a fight to the death, which Dumbledore would not agree to.
Yeah.
Again, because of why? Ariana. But if it was just them,
yeah,
I can understand how Voldemort might be afraid of Dumbledore. If Dumbledore was a completely different person who would duel to kill.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe a more accurate title for that chapter would have been like the only man who ever intimidated him. But it's a little bit of a mouthful, so maybe not.
Yeah, like I said, fear is the bow you put on the package of all the other emotions. It's like when somebody is talking behind your back, it's not about them being a gossip and talking behind your back. It's about them being jealous, angry, hurt, frustrated. It's all those other things wrapped into that package. And that's why they feel the need to talk about you and put you down, because they don't know how to express those emotions. Voldemort does not know how to express those other emotions. And so it comes out as that little bow of fear.
It's fair. It's good. I will agree. All right. So this week's question is, to what degree do you think Ariana's death influenced how Dumbledore treated Harry over the years? So, as you might have been able to tell from earlier in the chapter, we picked this question because Kat and I had a little bit of a disagreement about this earlier on, to what degree we think Ariana's death kind of motivates Dumbledore throughout the series. So we want to hear your thoughts. We will be posting this question on our social media throughout the week after this is released. And just let us know at Aciopolitics on all social media. Shoot us a DM, comment on the post, send us an email, aciopolitics@gmail.com. Send us an owl, shout into the void, however you want to let us know the answer to this question. We want to hear it, and we will read your answers on the podcast next week.
I mean, probably don't shout into the void, though, because my void is broken. I haven't been able to hear anybody in a long time, so that won't be helpful for me. And also, I just want to throw it out there that I'll send like $100 to anybody who agrees with me, so just so that I can beat 3 over here.
I can see your Slytherin poking out right now. Goodness.
Yeah, she does that from time to time. I like to win.
I mean,
what can I
guys,
say?
take her up on it. Like, fine. Say that I'm wrong if it means you get $100. I'm cool with that.
I mean, my fingers are crossed. I'm not sending anybody $100. But how about if you reply to like the tweet or something? Yeah, I don't know. I'll pledge for you on Patreon for a couple of months or something. How about that?
Wow, so generous.
I just like to beat Helene. So
very competitive person over here.
All I do is win, no matter what.
Oh, goodness. Well, talking about competition, we're moving on to our media we've been consuming. And the media that I've been consuming is a reality competition. So it kind of works there. I mentioned this last week, but I've been watching The Circle on Netflix, which is a social media reality competition series. I'm thoroughly obsessed. I'm almost done with season 2. And Kat, I think you'll be interested in this because I actually think I texted you about this earlier in the week. But Lance Bass of NSYNC fame makes a little cameo in season 2. So big NSYNC fan over there.
My first gay love. Yeah. So, well, I am currently watching a 30-year-old television show called Mad About You. So that is the media that I'm consuming. The complete opposite of that weird social media show you're watching.
I mean, a lot of the times, most of the time when I answer, it's like I'm rewatching something that either came out forever ago or I've seen like 30 times or both. So no judgment here. Mad About You, that's the one with like it has like Phoebe's sister Ursula from Friends on it. Okay.
I love how that's the way that you know the show when it's like Helen Hunt's breakthrough.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's all I know about it is that Ursula from Friends is on it.
Tisk tisk.
Who knows? Might have to add it to my watch list. See, this is like one reason why I love doing these segments with Adri is that a lot of the times I get ideas for what to watch next because she tells me what she's watching and it sounds interesting and then I go watch it.
Very fair. Well, you should go watch it because Mad About You is a fantastic show and Ursula's in like 4 episodes.
Oh, okay.
At all. So
it's like like a basic 90s sitcom kind of thing? Or
yeah, it's about a newlywed couple.
Okay. All right.
It's great. It takes place in New York and they're friends. It's very normal. Let me just say it's like very normal. But both Helen Hunt's character and Paul Reiser, her husband, they're like sort of neurotic.
Okay.
It's very normal, but it's very funny. It's an incredibly clever show. It's really great.
All right. I do like me some 90s sitcoms. So
yeah, I watched a couple episodes, randomly years ago, and it's finally available to stream. And I was like, yep, I'm going to finally watch this show all the way through. So
awesome.
It's worthy. Worthy.
Well, this is also usually around the time where we let our guests do whatever plug they want to include in the episode. And I know that you did at one point earlier on mention your new spinoff, Full Circle. But did you want to maybe expand on that, or is there anything else you'd like to plug?
Well, I mean, everybody should just go listen and subscribe to Alohomora, which has 2 A's on the end, 3 O's in the middle. It's not Aloha, it's Alohomora, just for the record. Alohomora. And Alohomora is, for those of you who may not know, the second longest running Harry Potter podcast on the web. We celebrated our 9-year anniversary not long ago. And we started out as a reread of the series. Much like this one, we didn't have the focus of politics. We talked about anything and everything. And now that the reread is done, we are doing topic episodes and some chapter revisits. So it's a lot of fun. Go check it out. And Full Circle, as Helene mentioned, is my spin-off podcast that's exclusive to our Patreon. And it is a reread of the series focusing on ring composition, which is this really amazing literary theory that basically says the first half of any book, not any book, books that are written with the theory in mind, the first half is reflected in the second half. And Adri was actually my co-host for book 7. So you should definitely go check that out. Patreon.com/Alohomora. It's $10 for 90 episodes. So super value.
Has the 7th season, book 7 of Full Circle already been released, or when does that come out?
Yep, all 7 books are out.
Awesome.
So you can listen to it in its entirety.
Real cool. Yes. She has some pretty great guests on there, including, of course, as she just mentioned, podcast co-host Adri. But, I know that at one point you got Rohan Go to Bed. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, Rowan Go to Bed.
Yes.
Yeah, he co-hosted book 5 with me, Order of the Phoenix. So had young Sirius talk about big Sirius. Yes. So it was
for those who are a little bit behind. Yes, Rowan played young Sirius in what was it, the Order of the Phoenix movie that he played?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Got Eric on there from MuggleCast for book 1. That was a good listen. So go check it out. It's really fun, and you will not regret it, especially if you like ring theory, which is pretty dang cool as a concept.
Yeah, if you're a Harry Potter nerd and you've read the books many, 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 many times, ring composition is the next place you have to go for sure. And it will completely change the way you look at and read the series. I do not use completely lightly. It will completely change the way you read the series. If you think you know Harry Potter, you don't. I challenge you to go listen. So, like I said, 90 episodes for $10. You really can't beat that.
Yeah.
So
go do it. Well, that's it for today's episode. You can join me and Adri next week to talk about chapter 38 of Order of the Phoenix, The Second War Begins. We're reaching the end, guys. We're almost done with Order of the Phoenix, and then we're going to move on to Half-Blood Prince, which I am so excited about. You guys know I can't shut up about Ginny, and I can't shut up about Dumbledore. I can't shut up about Harry, and guess what? The Half-Blood Prince is basically the Harry, Dumbledore, and Ginny book. So, get ready.
They're ready. They can't wait.
Now, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please, we ask you to go give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this right now. It helps new listeners find our podcast and kind of just makes us feel good about ourselves because we like external validation. Please go do that. All right, well, do you want to close us out?
All right, everybody. Until next time, politics managed.
Support this show by going to patreon.com/Occhiopolitics. Our patrons keep this show going. You can find us online at Occhiopolitics.com, and we are at Occhiopolitics on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can email us your thoughts at info@Occhiopolitics.com. Leave us a voicemail at 915-996-1699. and you might just hear yourself on the podcast. Adriana Wilson is the founder and creative director of the podcast. Helene Karp is the producer and social media manager. Allison Pullman is the audio wizard and editor who makes us sound so good. Cover art and physical rewards are designed by Adriana Wilson. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are expressly their own and not representative of their employers or associates. Occiopolitics is part of the MuggleNet family of podcasts.